What's happening, people? Back with another reaction, back with another cover of Duran Duran. And this one is going to involve tentacles, hell rides, and magical joy rides. But don't worry, that'll all make sense in a moment. We're going to listen to a cover by the Wesley Willis Fiasco. As quickly as possible, I shall explain. This is actually a group I know a deal about. I'm not going to say a great deal about, but a certain deal about. Basically, Wesley Willis was an individual from the Chicago area who had some really awful experiences growing up. His mother had an abusive boyfriend who sort of like psychologically terrorized him and basically just abused him, not in the same way as the mother, but ultimately it was a really toxic situation and it affected him mentally. And ultimately he began riding buses, and sometimes when things were going well, he would deem it as a magical joy ride, and he would draw pictures. He'd keep a notebook, and he was always drawing. And other times when things weren't going well and the stresses and the voices were sort of getting louder, he would call it like a terrible hell ride. And ultimately, he eventually came into contact with Jello Biafra. If you don't know who Jello Biafra is, his real name is Eric Boucher, and he is the famed and one-time lead singer of the Dead Kennedys, and ultimately one of the most punk rock people that could possibly exist, just in terms of his ethos and sort of his self-critical lens that he can turn on himself and so on. Bottom line, there are a few people with as much punk rock credibility as Jello Biafra. He runs the Alternative Tentacles independent record label, which he started with one of his former bandmates in Dead Kennedys, East Bay Ray. Eventually, it became Jello's sole property, and eventually there was some disagreement between the band about like royalties, and there was an accounting error. And also at this time, they had put out an album which included a picture by H.R. Giger, which was a sort of graphic image. And that led like very ridiculously through the PMRC, the Parents Music Resource Center, sort of conservative group that was intent on either banning music or at least like putting those parental warning stickers on albums and so on. Even independent music, which wasn't part of the major labels. And so they ended up in court because they were like sued for distributing harmful matter. And even though they won the case on like free speech, like musical creativity grounds, the frictions within the band ultimately led to the band breaking up. And then over time, there's just been friction between Jello and the other members. In any case, after the dissolution of the Dead Kennedys, Jello was in, I think, Chicago working with Lars, I forget his name, his last name, but of Ministry, like the metal sort of, like, I think it's like a solo project of this guy Lars. But he started working with this guy, and they made a record under the name Lard, which has a couple like really famous like punk rock tunes, if you know Jello's like work outside Dead Kennedys. And while he was there, he came into contact with Wesley Willis, and he saw his drawings, and he realized that, despite having issues, this was a really creative person. And lo and behold, one of the other things that by this time Wesley had started doing was using keyboards to make, like, he would basically play one of the demo tracks. There's like 80s, like 90s keyboards with the, like 4 or 5 demo tracks or whatever, and he would play like, 2 or 3 of the same demo tracks, and he would write lyrics to them, often sort of like absurdist, like, kind of nonsensical, like, Batman kicked my ass is like one of his most famous ones, and they're all just kind of like weird, like sort of stories, but they're kind of like, characters or things that are like from different places and kind of smashed together. But they're funny. Like, the first time I heard it, I can't deny, I was laughing, and I was like, what is this? This is insane. So again, Jello discovered this, and he was like, oh my gosh, this guy is like more punk rock than, a lot of punks out there who are, like doing the pop punk image thing and like on posters and so on. He was like, this is kind of like real punk rock. So he produced a couple records by Wesley, like compilations essentially, that were, all the songs are like a minute and a half, and they're all the same sort of structure. So eventually they got enough people who were kind of interested in Wesley, and it was kind of helping Wesley like do better. Not always, still had hell rides, but he was doing better. And they eventually put together like a touring band, Wesley Willis Fiasco. Now, by the time the tour was done, again, because he had mental health issues and so on, there were like, it wasn't a sustainable enterprise for a long period of time. And eventually Wesley sort of became more ill and a like normal, like, what's the word? Like a pathological sense, not just like a mental health. And eventually he passed away at a relatively early age. I want to say he was like in his early to mid 40s. So, over the years, people have taken a different opinion about like the Wesley Willis Fiasco. Was it like exploitation? Even Jello has like, explored like, did we take advantage of him and so on. But a number of people have said like, again, like you were trying to help him like have the most joy rides he could do, and ultimately you gave him an outlet for his creativity and so on. So, in a way, I stand by, Jello's sort of attempt to make his life better and to give him a sort of outlet for the sort of better parts of his mind, if you will. So with all that in tow, we're going to listen to the Wesley Willis Fiasco cover of Girls on Film. As you will know, Girls on Film, if you've been following the Duran reactions, which I imagine a number of people here will have been, not sure about the syntax of that sentence, nevertheless, you'll remember that Girls on Film is actually one of the tunes that I remembered, like before I began the deep dive, which is to say when we got to that relatively early on in the deep dive, I was aware of what it was going to sound like. I remembered that like classic sample, not sample, but the classic refrain, if you will. So yeah, I do enjoy this tune a lot. It's classic. It's, it just reminds me of like the early Duran that took the world by storm. So yeah, I am interested to hear it. I will say, the songs I've heard from the Wesley Willis Fiasco, they're punk rock, but they have kind of this like hard rock feel. I'm not going to call it metal, but it's a bit like a heavier guitar, a bit slower percussion rhythms. So maybe I expected to have that sound, but let's find out. And I do apologize for all that setup, but for anyone who didn't know, I figured I needed to explain a little. So this is the Wesley Willis Fiasco and their cover of Girls on Film. Bit of like funky psychedelic flavor to the guitar. Kind of like Red Hot Chili Peppers or something. Get it, Wesley. That's so Wesley Willis, the delivery there. Hold tight, give each other in a whisper. Take me up like a city star. Girls on film, girls on film, girls on film, girls on film.
struggle, messing you as a man you can trust.
Oh my god, I forgot. And what did I forget? I forgot that at the end of, I think, almost every Wesley Willis song, like, you know, his own songs, not just with the Fiasco, he'll do like a little like ditty or like a phrase from a commercial. So like again, it's like 80s and 90s sort of references, and sometimes they're like local market references, but yeah, he'll do like a song where it's again like I kick Spider-Man's ass or whatever, and then it gets to the end and he'll be like, you know, shop something mart, and it's like, wait, what? Like, what did he just say? So again, what impresses me about the Fiasco experience, you know, even if it didn't last over a longer timeline, is that, you know, his own songs are very stream of consciousness. Now again, like he would write them down, and so he would kind of like, you know, he could perform a song like true to what he had recorded it. But ultimately, the writing of the songs is clearly just this sort of cathartic kind of stream of consciousness process. So for him to like, you know, ingrain or incorporate the lyrics of like a classic Duran tune enough to kind of like perform it and to not like go off script and so on, I find really impressive. And indeed, I feel like, I'm going to put a comment below this video, I feel like any Duranis who find this video and don't know the sort of background of Wesley Willis Fiasco, I feel like they might hear his vocal performance as like disrespectful or like sort of, you know, having a laugh at the song. I really don't think it's that. I think with context and understanding of what Wesley Willis was and, you know, who he was, I think it should be clear this is more just an expression of his artistic creativity, as, you know, out there and eccentric as that was. So yeah, I enjoyed that, and the sound was what I remembered. It had that kind of harder rock sound. It, you know, it was a bit punk rock, but almost just more like, you know, a bit harder edged alternative rock. So yeah, it is what I remembered. And then I didn't hear what the ad was, but clearly that last bit at the end, kind of under all the, you know, sort of growling guitars that are sort of hanging on that last chord, there was some sort of commercial reference in there, so I'll have to listen to it again. But shout out to Izzy bringing this album to my attention, and you know, when I saw that name on there, I was like, wow, there's a cover by Wesley Willis Fiasco. So yeah, like the next couple days I'm gonna be a bit busy. You know, it's holidays, and ultimately I work late on like Wednesday night here for me, which I guess is Thursday morning for a lot of you people. So yeah, I don't know how many videos I'll be able to shoot between now and Christmas. I'll have a few, definitely. But yeah, there may not be a whole bunch of videos between now and then. Maybe not like more than one or so Duran videos between now and then. So if that turns out to be the case, I just wanted to wish everyone a happy holidays, Merry Christmas, Happy Hanukkah, Happy Kwanzaa, happy anything that you celebrate. I hope that your life is going well, or at least as well as can be given circumstances, and that you have as good of a holiday experience as you can. So in any case, I will see you next time. Peace.